Let's talk about work. Now, Pastor Mike spent his weekend sermon talking about what it looks like for us as Christians to think through work. And I want to do something a little bit different today and do a little bit of back and forth with you. And I know you're not actually there. I'm just talking to myself, I guess, but you're listening to this, and I'm going to anticipate some pushback on this message on work. Because I think that our generation, if you're around your 30s, which all of us in Alliance are, the issue of work has become a cultural thing that our generation is not too fond of. The desire to not work hard, the desire to retire early, the desire to have passive income, the desire to live the van life, the desire to do something other than work has become what seems like the norm pushed on social media, and it's become kind of the attitude of our culture that it's like work is a necessary evil, work is a bad thing, work is something we get through so that we can enjoy our life, and I really just don't want that to be the case for us, because as we heard in Pastor Mike's sermon, work is not bad, work is good. Work is a gift. It is something that God gave us before the fall, that we should work and enjoy our work, and that work would be something that would be good and beneficial for us, that as we do our work, we find benefit from it. So I want us to do a little bit of pushback. So here's my pushback. You might be thinking that work is a necessary evil. Now, you remember from the weekend sermon, Pastor Mike made the claim that in Genesis, you see that the man is to work and take care of the garden. That's something that happened pre-fall. Now, after the fall, work changes in that it becomes difficult. It becomes a toil. It becomes laborious. It becomes hard to till the ground and do the work. But the work itself is not inherently bad. The work itself is not bad just because it's difficult either. The difficulty of work might make work not as enjoyable, but it doesn't make work bad just because it's hard and we have to toil at it. And we know that here on this earth, in our bodies, when we work, there's going to be a component of our work that is laborious. It's going to be a toil. It's going to be a struggle. There's going to be difficulty. It's going to be striving. These are words that the Bible uses for our work as Christians and our work in general, when we have to do the work that we need to provide for ourselves and to do the work that God calls us to do. It's a toil. It's a struggle. That doesn't make it bad. Work in and of itself is something that God has given to us as a gift, and it is good. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but it's still not that good, because you might be thinking that work is something that's going to go away when we get our new bodies, when we get to heaven, when we enter into God's rest. These phrases that we hear used, that work's going to go away. So really, work is just something that happens now. It's something that we have to endure. And really what we're looking for is we're looking for that lengthened time of rest where we can rest in Christ and no longer work. I'm going to push back on this and say this. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case biblically, because even as you look at it, Jesus receives his resurrected body. He now is continuing to do work by training his disciples. He ascends into heaven, and what does he do when he goes into heaven? He says, I'm going to go, and what's he going to do? I'm going to prepare a place for you. He's going to do some work while he's anticipating his church coming and being with him. He's going to prepare a place for us. He's working then. As we read in John 5, it says that my Father, Jesus is saying, my Father is always at his work. And then Jesus says, and so am I, implying that he is going to continually and perpetually be working. God continues to work, and we are going to continue to work. You might be thinking, but what about the passages where Jesus says, you're going to enter into my rest? Oh, well, today I'm going to enter into his rest. Or this idea that we see in Matthew 11, all those who weary and heavy laden, come to me and I'm going to give you rest. What is that talking about? Are you saying that's pointing us to an eternal place where we're no longer going to work? Well, it's not the case. What's really being referred to, and you see this drawn out in the book of Hebrews, chapters 3 and 4, is that the idea of rest here is given to the people of Israel, that they are struggling against the nations, that there's a force against them. They are making their ability to obey and serve God difficult. They're making their work more difficult. And then it says that he's going to bring them into the land where they're going to have rest. So the work of serving God and doing that work doesn't go away, but the toil and the difficulty decreases, and ideally goes away, but it decreases in that context. What we have in our eternal heavenly dwelling with God is not the removal of all work in our rest, but the removal of the difficulty. The difficulty of our work, the toil and the struggle of our work is a consequence of our sin and the curse that came upon us because of our sin. When we get our glorified bodies and we're with God, we will still work. In Revelation, it says very clearly that his servants will serve him. This is talking about the new heaven and the new earth. Revelation 22. His servants are going to serve him. It's going to be a day and night service to God, but it's going to be in the context of rest. Well, how can those two things go together? It's a work that is enjoyable. It is a work that is pleasing, and it is a work that doesn't have the difficulty of the curse of sin upon it. So work in the beginning is good. It's a gift. Then there's a curse that's applied to it. That curse makes it difficult and challenging for us, but it doesn't make it bad. Work still remains good, and work is something that continues not just from the beginning, but all the way through the end. It is existing in the millennial reign of Christ. It is existing in the new heavens and the new earth, and it is a work that is mixed in with an enjoyment of that work, but it doesn't go away. So work can't be bad. Work is something that God has given us that is good. Now you might be thinking, but my work is bad. I go to work and I'm not doing anything of significance. I'm not doing something that's God honoring in my work. I'm pushing papers. I'm sitting at a desk. I'm answering phone calls. I'm sending emails. I'm doing tasks. I'm interfacing with the public. Whatever it is you're doing in your work, you might be thinking, this is not the work that God's given me to do. And which I would say this: we need to turn our minds to Ephesians 2:10 and remember that God has created us for good works, that he's prepared for us beforehand that we should walk in them. And where is the context that you're going to do those good works that God has prepared for you to do? It's going to be in the place where you spend most of your time, which is your work. So your work might not be your calling, but your calling is to do good works wherever God has you. So even if you're not doing something that's inherently glorifying to God through your tasks of your job, you have the opportunity to fulfill your calling and do good works in the place that God has called you to work. And so work is good, and we can do good works in the midst of our jobs, even if it's not something that's directly associated with kingdom work of doing something in the church, serving in the church. We can serve others, we can be Christ-like, and we can do the good things that God has called us to do in our work. I think that perspective needs to change in our culture. And we have the front lines opportunity to be the ones that show that Christians work and think about work differently. That we enjoy our work, that we come to work knowing that God has prepared for us work to do in that day, in that space, and we're excited to do what God has called us to do. We need to be diligent in our work, have the right attitude in our work. So many things in this sermon that were so helpful for us, but we need to reframe our thinking and no longer have any objections in our mind that work is bad. Work is not bad. Work is good. It's a gift of God. God works. He continues to work. Jesus works. We are called to work, and our work is good, and it's a benefit, and we can see it that way and work hard because we see it that way. I want this perspective to change in our minds, and I want us to consider this in our groups as we talk about this, as we wrestle with this, as we deal with any objections to this, so that we can be on the same page as a body of believers to know that God has called us to do good work. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is something that you take to heart this week and you really put into practice, thinking about what it means not to be lazy, but to work, and to work with the right perspective and the right attitude. We'll see you soon.